Morning, Aris. I think we're going to give people about 1 more minute and then we can start, everybody. Hello, Dr. Miner.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Dr. Rose.
Hi, Miss Charlton. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Good morning, Miss Rose. How
Good
are you?
morning, Saji. Good morning, everybody. Hi, Anna, Aaliyah. Oh, good, Aaliyah. I'm glad you got the message. Miss, I tried to go into my room and leave a message, but I couldn't leave my room open and be here. So as kids text, I'll tell them.
Wonderful.
But they still know.
Yeah, they're all slowly joining. I think about 30 more seconds and we're going to go ahead and get started, and then kids can join as they come. If anyone hasn't already opened up their questions, you should go ahead and do that. So everybody, we have Patrick Gill here with us today. And most of you, I believe all of you were present in class to see his TED Talk called A Friend in Debt. And he's being generous enough to give us some of his time today to talk with us about debt, finances, and his experience in giving a TED Talk. And so everybody has written questions in advance to prepare for this. Patrick, would you just introduce yourself for a moment?
Sure. My name is Patrick Gill. I'm a regional vice president for one of the major banks here in Canada. In Toronto, Toronto is the home base for Manulife, and Waterloo, Ontario, if anyone knows Canada, is the head office for our bank. And I'm really glad to be here this morning. I have kids at home, so like many of you, I'm sure if you hear them in the background, you're pretty used to it by now, but I appreciate being on this call, and I thank you for your interest in learning more about personal finances, as well as understanding the process that I had to go through for the TEDx talk.
Thank you so much. We are very grateful. Would anyone like to start us off with a question? Don't be shy.
I'll do it.
Thank you.
My first question is, was it hard to like get on, like, I don't know how to say it. Was it hard to get the TED Talk, like the whole process?
This was Bas that asked that question.
Yeah.
It's a good question. It took me by surprise, actually. I've been with my company now for 17 years. And for 15 years, while I was at this bank, I was meeting Canadian families and teaching them how to restructure their debt and their assets to put them in a more efficient situation. And I wanted to still give them all the flexibility in the world by rearranging their finances a certain way. And so I became quite adept at doing that, and probably over 5,000 families I met during that span of time. But in 2016, we had a co-op student. So we had a co-op student from the University of Waterloo that was working for us. And she actually went back to school to finish her postgraduate work. And she just happened to also be on the committee that organized TED Talks. And the topic was interconnectedness. So how do things in life interconnect to make us whole? And they thought, well, instead of just mental health and physical health, what about financial health? And as soon as they said that, they thought of me. And so I got a call and I was asked if I would speak on the main stage. And this person already knew me because I have done thousands of presentations about the topic. So interconnectedness with regards to financial well-being. I thought of the topic of debt because it affects so many people. In Canada, we are one of the highest indebted countries per capita. So we right now owe about $1.71 for every dollar we make. Yeah. And it's not a surprise. There's many countries in the same boat, but Bas, to answer your question, it was difficult. The process, if you want me to go through the process, I can tell you that, because it was difficult and a little bit nerve-wracking. In fact, there's a few times I punched myself and said, why did you even say yes to this? Because, I still had to go to work. I still had my family to take care of, and this was taking up a lot of time, and it was nerve-wracking too, because I've done presentations in front of hundreds of people, but never live webcast around the world. So that's a great question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Somebody else have a question? Oh, Bas, go ahead.
Oh, I'll go again?
Oh, no, I thought you were just going to respond.
Oh, no. I was saying thank you.
So if you like, Kristin, I can actually go through. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
That was me. Okay. Ms. Ray, I have a question for Mr. Gill.
Call me Patrick. Call me Patrick, please.
Okay, Patrick. My name is Donna, and I'm just wondering, what do you think about bankruptcy? And is it, first of all, would you advise it for people who have gotten themselves into a hole? And is it something that you think people can recover from if they do opt to file for bankruptcy?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Donna. Bankruptcy, I always think, is as a last resort when it comes to your finances. It takes quite some time to rebuild credit. And sometimes you don't even realize how important credit is to keep payments up and to make sure that you're in good standing with credit worthiness. It could be as simple as even renting a car where they need a credit card, and all of a sudden you don't have a credit card, you can't rent a car. And today, the credit bureaus like Equifax and TransUnion, they're the same here in Canada as they are in the States. They touch a whole bunch of different areas now. So even if you want to open up a bank account, because of the virtual nature of banking, some of them check your credit. And if there's a bankruptcy, that could stop you from even opening up a bank account. So sometimes people don't realize the full effect of what a bankruptcy might do. There's a lot of cascading effects that just because your credit's gone now, there are some things that might affect you in the future. I always kind of say before, but you are probably the best person to understand your situation. And so sometimes it's a matter of talking to a debt counselor or your banker or your financial advisor sometimes, and to get a situation in terms of how the gravity of the situation, they may say that is an option right now. And so there's a couple steps even before that. There's things in Canada, at least, called a consumer proposal, where they're going to help you to relieve your debt. That's not quite as severe as a bankruptcy, but certainly it does affect your credit in a similar way. And usually it sometimes takes about 2 years to what we call like the completion of the bankruptcy. And then sometimes it takes up to 7 years to actually fix your credit. So yeah, I would say that it's a situation that you know best. And if you're really feeling the weight of debt and pressure, I always say that debt affects people on a cellular level. It's not just the payments that you have to worry about. It's your health, it's your stress, it's your family. And nobody can really feel those things except yourself. So if you do feel that weight is too heavy, bankruptcy absolutely could be a solution, but let's make sure that it's talked to by with a professional first, because they'll tell you if there's anything else that you possibly could do before you get to that stage.
That was a wonderful question, Donna. Would anyone else like to ask one of their questions?
I had a question. It was, what is a good place to start when creating a TED Talk?
Oh, that's good. I would say that if you think of something that's passionate, that you have a passion for, that is easy to talk about, that could really help to change people's lives, I think that's a great place to start. And a lot of people think you got to have, these big designations or, PhD beside your name, or no, everyone has a story, and everyone's story can affect people in a different way. Sharing your humanity is a huge part about the TED Talks. I mean, the closer you can get to people on a certain level, the better it is. So when someone talked to me and said, hey, would you like to talk about, the interconnectedness of finances and debt with personal lives, I thought, yeah, I could talk about that. If they asked me to talk about being a vice president of a bank, I would think that's a little bit boring, but this topic allowed me to touch people in a certain way. And when I first started preparing for this, they said, it's got to be 18 minutes. It's got to be 18 minutes. And I said, is that a rule? I said, that's a rule with TED. And I was struggling. I was struggling to get this whole message out because there was so much I wanted to talk about. That's when you're passionate about something and you really have done it for such a long time, you can talk quite a bit about it and you can keep people engaged pretty easily. And I had a hard time getting it under 18 minutes, but funny enough, my talk went slightly over, I think 18 minutes and 40 seconds, something like that. And I was concerned. And then someone pointed out to me, did you know that the top TED Talks are all over 18 minutes? Not just TEDx Talks, but TED Talks. So there's a difference. TED Talks, of course, is the main stage. TEDx is the community-driven experience for that. And I think I wrote them down. Do schools kill creativity? 19 minutes. Body language may shape who you are, 21 minutes. And great leaders inspire action, 18 minutes and 4 seconds. So I was okay with that. And as I started to get more people watching it, I know I'm not even close to where some people are, but I was up to about 40,000 views in the first 6 months. And I said, wow, that's incredible. And it started to slow down as time went on, but I haven't even put it on my LinkedIn. I haven't put it on my Facebook, haven't done anything, because when you're starting this, your question about a good topic, I wasn't allowed to talk about my company. I wasn't allowed to talk about any products. So I really had to gear this as a conversation that was not selling. We couldn't sell anything. So there's just so many things that came to my mind. And I know debt can be good and I know debt can be bad. You get yourself in a situation where it's hard to get out of. and you're in that debt continuum with high credit card debt, lines of credit debt, car loan debt, it's pretty hard to get out of it. But there are ways to get out of it, which I can help you with. And then the second thing is, when you're out of it and you have credit available, that's when it becomes a huge asset for you. You know, if you ever wanted to jump on an investment, build a company, start a franchise, get into a partnership with somebody, that's when debt can be a really good friend, even investment property. So that's the double meaning of the conversation and the topic, a friend in debt. So you could have a friend in debt that's in trouble, and you could find a friend in debt in the future. One of the things that I would really stress about the TED Talks is that you have to prepare. I found I must have gone over that 100 times, over and over and over again. And you can't prepare too much. And I know that you think that, you know, just because it's something that you can talk about easily or passionate about, certain things can happen. And I'll tell you a funny story. What happened with me, I would do my memorization in my basement, but my kids and my family could sometimes hear me down in the basement 2-3 o'clock in the morning, memorizing this thing. And on the night before the TED Talk, I was just a ball of nerves. They changed my presentation from in Apple, it's called Keynote, to PowerPoint. And in doing so, it lost some of the animation. It actually broke down some of the slides, and they didn't tell me. So as I'm getting up on the main stage and I'm talking, I'm seeing that my animations aren't working. I'm seeing slides disappear. So they actually have two monitors. One's called a comfort monitor. A comfort monitor is down on the ground, and you can see what the next slide is and maybe some notes if you have any. And then, of course, the main monitors just show you or the slides that are up. And they were wrong. And because I had practiced over and over and over again, I just went with it. Now, the good thing is, when the final TEDx comes out, they can edit it. So you'll see that they don't show my full presentation all the time. They show me, and then they skip to the presentation because they edited it to make sure that those mistakes came out. But it could have drastically changed the presentation if I hadn't prepared. And so I had a lot of friends in the audience who I practiced with over and over, and they saw what was happening. They saw that the wrong slides were coming up, and they're going, "Oh my gosh, what is he going to do?" And thank goodness I had enough times going over this that it became second nature, and it didn't matter what slide was up. It was something that I could overcome.
That sounds super scary.
Yeah, it was. But I mean, like I said, everything's not as scary. Once I was up there, I was fine. When I was in the green room beforehand, I was so nervous. But as I got up there and I started talking, even with the slides being compromised, it was nothing. I was talking to my best friend again.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You mentioned something about good debt. Could you expand on what you mean by good debt? I know you mentioned that it gives you the ability to then be able to like purchase an investment property, but what does good debt look like?
Right. So in Canada, and I know that in the United States, if you own a home, you can actually write the interest off on your mortgage. And for many homeowners, it's a huge benefit. And that's why sometimes you'll find that they don't necessarily want to pay the debt off as quickly as possible, because if they're making strong income, they can write it off against their taxes. In Canada, we don't have that. Our mortgage is not tax deductible, but investments are. What do I mean by that? If you actually borrow money to invest in Canada, depending on the investment, most investments, you can write the interest off. So if it's an investment property, if it's a business, if it's stocks or bonds, mutual funds, you can write the interest off on your debt. So it's considered good debt because it's tied to an asset that you're hopefully is going to grow. And I also think good debt is any debt that you use because you have to, right? You have to use it. There's a lot of people in a situation where cash flow is not strong. They're in a situation where they're on maternity leave, or they've lost their job, or they're sick. They're taking care of a family member. If you don't have the money, you're going to have to use some sort of debt product. And that I consider good debt too. Paying it off is going to take some time in some cases, but it would have saved you at that time. So when I say good debt, it's two things: debt that helps you to prepare for emergencies, and debt that can be used for growing your financial situation and your net worth and your whole wealth situation.
Thank you. Would another student like to ask a question?
Could I ask one?
Thank you, Destiny.
So I was wondering if you end up going to college and you have like hundreds of thousands of dollars in loan debt, I was wondering what's the best way to get out of that like debt?
So it's funny, I did explain that because the girl that you saw if you watch the TED Talks, is my niece, and she did graduate with a lot of debt. And when this whole presentation was started, I thought she just came to us a little while ago and said, is so proud that she was going to be debt free soon. I think the secret to paying off debt aggressively is to consolidate it and to bring it to one low interest rate first. A lot of times, if you have all these different pockets of debt, so you have a line of credit, you have credit cards, and you have student loans. It's funny how the bank set this up, but you usually have to make a big payment to your mortgage that has the lowest interest rate. And you make small payments to credit cards, let's say, because they allow you to, and they have the highest interest rate. So I never want to slam the banks or disparage anyone, but I will say this, that they make billions of dollars every single year. So sometimes not necessarily listening to everything they tell you to do, and maybe trying the opposite sometimes may actually work for you. So I know I work for a bank, but we think a little bit differently. We want to help people get out of debt. We think that debt can be a real concern, and getting out of debt is true freedom. So I hopefully that answers a little bit of your question in terms of how to pay it off. Consolidate it, bring it to one low interest rate, get out of all those different payments and different interest rates, and then just try to put as much money into it every single month as possible. The good thing about some debt is it's readvanceable, meaning that once you pay it down like a line of credit, you can take it back out. So the good thing about that, if you can be disciplined, if you have money in your checking account, put it against the line of credit. It's always there if you need it, but while it's sitting there, it's actually knocking down your interest. So I hope that answers your question in terms of the best way. Remember also that when I mentioned in mine at the time, there were some benefits provided by the government to help people that were coming out of school with certain debts. Bottom line is you still have to pay it back. So if you do get into a situation where you come out of school and you have a job, you could take advantage of some government programs, but at the same time, try to set it up so that you have some flexibility in paying it down more than just the minimum payments, more than just the set payments. If you can pay it down more aggressively, that will always help you in terms of the amount of interest you pay and of course the time.
How would you go about originally like consolidating those lines of credit?
Yeah, so if you have multiple lines of credit, then talk to your banks or bank that you probably have the best relationship with, the best credit with, the most your checking accounts there, and they see income going in, those types of things. They'll usually be able to provide you with the larger line of credit to consolidate. Now, if you have a home, that's even better, because if you do have a home, you can take out equity from your home and and probably get a much better interest rate than something that's not secured. So interest on a unsecured, meaning there's nothing that you're pledging to get this loan, their interest rates are higher. If you have some security, whether it's your investments or your home, you can usually, you can actually get a better interest rate. So Destiny, I'm not sure the situation of many on this call, but I would look at it that way first. Go to the bank that you have the best relationship with. Try to get as large a line of credit as possible to consolidate everything into one. And if you have a home, see if that can happen. And family members are also can be very helpful too. Like it's not a matter of you taking money from them. If it's possible for them to help you out, parents to take out equity from their home, sometimes the 2% or 3% is not even their concern. Maybe they just say, pay us back when you can. You're in a better situation. And here's what you know, give us what you can. We won't even charge you the interest, but we'll keep track of the amount that you're paying down. Does that kind of answer that, Destiny?
Yeah, that does. Thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure. Parents, it's becoming a pretty big thing in Canada because the housing prices are skyrocketing still. Even in this time of pandemic, housing prices are still very high. And it's very difficult for first-time home buyers, especially in the greater metropolitan areas, to afford a home. No difference, I'm sure, in Providence. So when housing market is high, the bank of mom and dad is becoming even more popular. You know, a lot of people are going to their family members for loans for a house, loans to consolidate debt, loans for a car. And I think it's great that if your family is helpful enough, they have some equity maybe in their home that they can take a loan and help you out with, it's a great place to start.
That's wonderful advice.
Yeah.
I think Ashley has her hand up, and then Yisel too. Ashley, go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Miss. I forgot to put it down, but he answered my question already.
Oh, okay, that's all right. Then Yisel.
Hi, I'm Yasel. Nice to meet you. How does a bad record affect the chances and probabilities of getting a credit card?
So it does affect, like, as I said, credit, I was taught at a very young age, you know, my father told me many times, keep your credit strong, keep your credit strong. And it's one thing I remembered. And I have had some times in my past where cash flow was strong. I didn't have a lot of income coming in. I had to rely on credit. And it's really important to at least make those minimum payments if you can. But depending on the lender, it may be difficult, especially credit cards. Credit cards, especially when you're in school, are easy to get because they want to give you a chance. But even then, you still have to have, like, they know that you don't have credit. And so they do have these specialty programs out there that if you don't have a lot of credit, they'll lend you. But of course, the interest rate's 18% or 22%. So there are other institutions that will, if your credit's bad, could possibly lend you on a secured credit card, meaning you're going to give them the cash already. The benefit of that is that you start to build up your credit. So as you spend on the credit card and pay it back, it actually helps to build your credit rating. So even though you started off in a bad place, you were given a credit card, a secured credit card where you had to put some money down to get that credit card. Once you start to build up credit again, get your money back on that credit card, get another credit card that doesn't need to be secured, and just start building credit that way. Now, credit's funny. A lot of people think that, well, I don't use credit. That doesn't help your credit. You might have a credit card that has a $2,000 limit and you don't use it. You say, I only want to use it for emergencies. If you think that way, you're pretty responsible, but it also doesn't help your credit. What helps your credit is actually spending on that card and paying it back on time. Okay, so I would keep those things in mind. if you're actively looking for some sort of credit, make sure that you have an understanding of what your credit situation is like. And you can always find that there's so many different companies that can help you with understanding what your credit bureau is like. And if you don't have any credit, look for people that are willing to lend to students, and even in some cases, maybe a secured credit card just to start your credit rating going.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Maybe Eris?
So I just thought of a question. If you get a like a small loan, I guess, but you pay it back quicker than the time you have to pay it back, does that affect your credit score?
Yeah, that's good. That actually helps your credit quite a bit. Now, it also depends on the type of credit. So things like car loans where there's what's called an installment payment. It's a payment of a certain amount of interest and principal every single month, let's say. Other credit is called revolving credit, meaning that as you pay it down, you can actually have that credit available to you still. So it's revolving, it's re-advancing. So usually lines of credit or credit cards, which are re-advancing or revolving, affect your credit a little bit more. If you can keep those in good standing, those will help you even better. Once you pay off a car loan, it does help you, but not to the same extent as revolving, because revolving means that you're continually looking after it. Whereas a car loan, once you pay it off, that's it. There's no more debt to be paid off. So yes, it does affect your credit in a good way when you have a small loan and you pay it off quicker than you can. But with a credit card, not necessarily. If you continually pay it off, make sure you're making your payments on time. That is how you really get strong credit.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Eris, Angel, Hector?
All good questions. Now, in terms of the preparing for a TED or a TEDx talk, was this class going to be involved in some sort of public speaking or a TEDx community talk or anything like that?
Yes. So each student is going to be giving a TED talk, and the topic for them is kind of twofold. It's how math is important in their everyday lives, and particularly pertaining to like financial literacy and your financial health. And so students have already engaged in what a credit card simulation where they were given a couple different choices for credit cards and had to figure out which one made sense and why. And so they learned a bit about making choices and living within their means. I think a big thing that we're trying to convey this term is this idea of living within your means and using credit for necessities to build credit, as opposed to looking at credit as free money to buy whatever you want.
Yes, luxury goods versus necessity, and making sure that you stay within your means is so important. I always say too that the only reason that debt gets you in trouble is that you're spending more than you're making. If you're spending less than you're making, credit will always be able to be good for you because you're using the money first off your credit card, off your line of credit, and then you pay it off when the bank wants it. See, I'm going to show you something really interesting right now. And I mentioned this in my TED Talks, but if you how many people, show of hands, how many people have debt right now? I'm not seeing everybody's hands, but yeah, if you want to put a thumbs up, if you have, I see 2 thumbs up, which means, yeah, you've got debt for sure. Okay. And how many people have money in their checking account?
Can I do thumbs down?
So for those people that have money sitting in checking and savings, and have debt, the bank is actually taking your money from your checking account and lend it right back to you at a higher interest than they're paying. Because in most cases in your checking account, they're not giving you any interest. But that's how inefficient our current banking system is. We don't realize it, but we've just been doing it since we were, 6, 7 years old, that's the way that we know. And that's the way that your parents knew. So you want to try to get out of that. There's a way to pay down debt quicker. Take that money out if you can and apply it against your debt. And of course, if you need it again, it can be readvanced. And some people will say, well, aren't I then just borrowing my money back? Yeah, you are. But you would have been borrowing much more had the money been just sitting in your checking account. You're paying interest on some of your debt every single day. So why not lower it while you can? If it's a car loan or a mortgage, it's a different situation. Once you put that money in, you can't get it back out. So that may affect your flexibility. That might affect your cash flow, and you would think twice before doing that. But if you have extra money and you say, well, I have some extra money here, what should I do? A great idea is to put that money against mortgage or car loan debt, because you'll pay it down faster. But absolutely, you want to make sure that you put yourself in the right situation. Don't have a lot of debt and a lot of money sitting in checking and savings at the same time. It doesn't make sense.
That's a really good point. Go ahead, Destiny.
All right. I had just a question about your TED Talks.
Yes.
Is there any advice? So we have to make a TED Talk. I was wondering if you had any advice on making like one.
Yeah. So as I said before, I think try to find something that you can talk passionately about. So even the topic might be about finances or about preparedness and credit or a credit card. Talk about how it affected you personally. Like the more people that you can reach, because you are talking about your personal situation and how things affect you, it's much more engaging than, let's say, doing research about a credit card and finding out about, what it was. And I know that I'm just saying Kristin mentioned that, but I think what she's asking for is more than just, here's the facts. How about how those things affected you? How about how you could actually benefit from some of these things and even be hurt by some of these things? And maybe about your own situation. If you have a family that's been affected, or family that tells you about how to take care of your finances, because there's not a lot of people that give advice about how to pay down debt. If you take a look on TED or TEDx, maybe that's even why I'm talking to a school in Rhode Island right now, because you guys went through all this stuff and found there's not a lot there, relatively speaking. You'll find a lot of great motivational speakers about, how to, I don't know, how to buy a car. Like there's so many different, but for debt, it's a scary topic.
Be a millionaire.
Yeah, that's right. It's hard. It's not an easy topic, because there's not a lot of schools that teach you how to take care of debt. I've visited a lot of schools since I've talked about this, and since I did my TED Talks, and there's university students that ask the most basic questions sometimes because they've never been taught. So there's a good place to start, Destiny. I know I went on a little bit there, but talk about how it affects you. Talk about how how it might have affected family members or friends, and in a good way and bad way. Talk about the pros and cons, not just the negative side, but where you could be. Does that help?
Yes, thank you so much. That was extremely helpful. I was actually curious about some of those side questions that you answered for me, so thank you.
Yeah, hopefully you just jogged down some notes if something kind of jogged your thoughts there. And that's the stuff that really engages people, when you can talk about yourself and share. Like I mentioned it earlier about sharing your humanity. There's a certain, I'll tell you, when you can be vulnerable and you can talk about yourself and you're not afraid to share, you'll see how powerful that is. It's very powerful when you can be vulnerable and share your humanity.
Yeah, I know that you told a lot of stories during your TED Talk. It
Yes.
was almost like a series, a compilation of stories. Do you think that that is more effectual than spitting out facts?
Always. Like I've been in sales all my life. So you have Best Buy there. That's where I started my career. I started in retail electronics for a company in Canada called Future Shop. And Future Shop did so well in Canada that we actually got bought out by Best Buy. So I don't know if you remember too, there was a company called Computer City. I'm not sure if it's still there in the States, but it tried to move into Canada. And we said, oh boy, we're in trouble now. Like these big US chains, they have big pockets and they could probably buy us out and undercut us in pricing. But we were so strong that we forced Computer City to leave Canada. Okay. So I've taken so many courses during that time in my sales career about storytelling and how you need to talk to people on a certain level. Storytelling and telling your own stories in that are always going to be, as I said, more powerful to get points across. If you can really practice that in your conversation and your TED Talks, you'll actually see that more people will be sitting on the edge of their seats and not lying back and having their eyes roll back. You'll see that right away. You'll be able to measure your audience in terms of how interested they are because you're talking about a story and how it affected you or could affect others.
I couldn't agree
I
more.
personally found you extremely relatable. Like for me personally, listening to lectures, I don't know. I lose concentration. I don't have a long attention span. But your stories made it so that way I kind of viewed you as more of a person. So they're extremely relatable.
That's really nice to hear, Destiny, considering I was over 18 minutes and trying to keep people engaged. So,
Dr. Miner.
Patrick, hi. I watched your TED Talk last night. It was fantastic.
oh, thank you.
2 questions. First, do you think it's always advisable to marry someone with more money than yourself? No. Second question is, can you talk a little bit about when should you start thinking about making a budget and what percentage of your income should go to the different parts of your life, like flexible income things, fun things, housing, food, that kind of thing?
Wow, that's a great question, Dr. Miner. It's funny that I go back to the point that I made earlier about not having education at the fundamental stages in education to learn about this. Think back, is there in your course of education, has there been courses for you on how to create a budget?
No.
Right? So I think it's extremely important. And sometimes finding out where that balance is comes through your own spending first. So creating a budget can be made by finding out how you're doing right now. If you're noticing that you don't have money in your checking and savings accounts at the end of the month, that's a pretty good place to start to say, how am I spending money right now? And start to track that and break it down into your categories. Food, groceries, rent, mortgage, other costs, fixed costs. Like break it down. You'll see that the fixed costs that can't be taken away are going to be there. You'll see that most of the places that you're going to be able to shave off or save some of that are your extra expenses. As Kristin said, those luxury items, or if you're going to Starbucks every day, we did a example of this where people are spending up to $10 a day on Starbucks. I know, sorry if that affects some people in this room to make you feel, but think about that on a monthly basis. That's $300 on a monthly basis. $300 on a monthly basis could be helping you to drive a car around. You know, if you find the car that you like. So everything has perspective. And so budgeting is a very personal thing. For me, there's no set idea of how much should be in a certain pocket, because many people have fixed costs that are there for them that others might not have. If you have kids, if you pay for education, if you live in a certain neighborhood where your property taxes are higher, all these things are going to affect how much you should put in each bucket. Most people do say that you should, most financial advisors say, at least I can help in this aspect, say that you should have at least 6 months of your income saved away in savings. Okay. So if you don't have that, and trust me, I don't want to scare people because most people don't have that. As many people as I find and talk to and say, hey, 6 months is what they recommend, most people don't have 6 months. And even, on a mortgage where a bank allows you to prepay your mortgage, where they say you're allowed to put X amount of dollars every single month or every year towards your mortgage to help pay it down quicker. 99% of Canadians don't make those prepayment options. Why? They don't have the money, or if they do have it, they don't want to put it against their mortgage because they won't have access to that money anymore. So I hope that answers a little bit, Dr. Miner, that start with yourself, see where your spending habits are right now, and see where you can actually shave off expenses. And then once you know you can shave off expenses in a certain area, stick to it. And maybe instead of going out for dinner 3 times a week, you cut it down to 2 times a week. If you can save $30 a month, $30 a week that way, that's $120 on a monthly basis saved. And I try to bring it down to that level of how basic it could be. Money is a choice. Spending money is a choice. Lifestyle is a choice. And you have a lot of control over that.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And yes, if you can find someone that makes more than you, makes life a lot easier.
Thank you. Do any other students have any other questions before we wrap up?
I have, I'm not a student, but I have a question.
Yes.
Still, that married person, afford to give us money too. They have to make a decision,
Yes.
Like me, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Anyway, our students going to receive a lot of credit card offers nowadays. They're turning 18, 19, 20, and when they go to the bank, I know there will be a sales pitch about credit card and why don't you get a student's credit card or whatever.
Yes.
My first question, how do they choose a credit card? And what is the ideal number of credit card they should have? And third question, I'm asking too many questions maybe.
No, not at all.
Third question, if they have credit card debts, for an example, if they have 4 credit cards and they have debts, what is the best way to pay off that? Which card they should choose first and pay that off, or to make those decisions, or they pay minimum payment, those things. What do you think about those things?
So I got a couple questions there. One is, the first one I'll answer is, how many do you think is the right number of credit cards, especially for a student coming out? So I'm phrasing it at that stage of life.
Yes.
Because for me, what I've known in looking at credit bureaus, the more credit, the better. As long as you're making your proper payments to it, and as long as you're not carrying high balances on them. Okay, because credit is a function of a couple of things. It's the amount that you have versus how much you've used, and are you paying it off properly? Those 3 things will affect your credit. How much credit do I have? How much have I used? And am I paying it off properly? What we're finding is that if you have a lot of credit and you're paying it off each month properly, and you're using it up and down, you'll have the highest credit ratings on Equifax or TransUnion. If you're keeping high balances on your credit cards and making minimal payments, even though they're on time, you'll have good credit. But in order to shave that down or get better credit, you should shave it down. Now it's interesting because people will ask me, I've tried to clean up my credit. Should I cut up my credit card? And I say no. If anything, or not cut it up. I say cut it up. Don't cancel it. Canceling credit affects how much you have available again. So if you cancel credit, you actually increase your usage. Do you know what I mean? Right? So try to keep your available credit high and try to make sure you're maintaining lower balances and paying that off. So to a person that's in school, 19 years old, I would say don't start off by applying for as many credits as you can, credit cards you possibly can. That affects your credit. Credit approval and what we call credit seekers. If you have many attempts to try to get credit, it will affect poorly on your credit bureau. Start with one. As you build up that, maybe get a second one. How do you pay them off? You look at the types of interest rates that you have. You always want to pay off. First of all, try not to carry any balances on your credit card. That's a huge discipline thing, that if you can pay your credit cards off at the end of each month when they're due, or whenever that cycle is due, that's the best way. That's the strongest credit ever. And of course, it keeps you from getting into a very poor habit. You go on that vacation and you say, I'm going to put it on my credit card. I'm going to pay it off as soon as I get back from my vacation. That never happens because life gets in the way. So you want to try to make sure that you're paying it off each month if you can. Start off slowly with one, build on the next one. And if you find yourself being responsible, get a line of credit, then keep your car loan. All those things will help build your credit. And I would say this again, it's not easy to keep discipline. So you yourself know, just as I answered for Dr. Miner, credit is personal. It's what you feel comfortable with. Don't overstress just because I said the more credits, the better once you start doing well. No, you have to have a certain comfort level with your own finances. If you can't sleep at night knowing that you have the ability to spend thousands of dollars, even though you haven't, you have to be comfortable with that. So don't have it. And sorry, did I answer all those questions? Was there any others? I think I got them right. And I would pronounce your name if I could. It's Kanagartnam.
Saji, you're muted.
You're on mute.
Kanagartnam, you're right.
It's a nice,
Thank you,
Sri Lankan name. Is that Sri Lanka?
Yes, it is Sri Lankan.
Yeah, very nice Sri Lankan name.
You might have seen a lot of Sri Lankan in Toronto.
Yeah, some good friends, yes.
Oh.
I think Destiny asked if she can ask one more question.
Sure.
So there's this, I don't know if you've heard of TikTok, but there's this TikTok video that talks about this guy talks about going on to this mortgage site.
Yes.
And going on to a retirement fund and putting into like $100 every week. And then apparently like by 65, you'll have at least $1 million. I was wondering, is that like a realistic thing that you can do, or?
Yeah. First of all, I'm going to break out in my TikTok shuffle after this. So I've got young kids. I got young kids, so they entertain me with TikTok. And yes, the power of compounding interest is incredible. And I think I said it in my TED Talks that people in the financial industry call it the eighth wonder of the world. I think it was Albert Einstein that said that, right? That compounding interest is the eighth wonder of the world, because if you have money gaining interest and then the next month it's gaining interest on the interest and it keeps on growing that way, you will have huge sums of money over time if you can do that more often. That's such an inspiring way to look at it. So we've been talking about debt and paying it down. The other side of that is asset wealth, asset growth. And if you can take advantage of the power of compounding interest, it's amazing. It's amazing what can happen if you're disciplined in putting money aside every single week, every single month, not touching it and letting it grow even at the smallest rates of interest. But try to find something, of course, that will give you a better rate. You'll get better returns. And yes, it's possible.
That's a great question, Destiny. Does anyone have any last questions before we wrap up?
Kristin, I
Yes.
don't have a question, but I do have a request. Patrick, I would love for you to say something about personal loans, just the students loaning money to friends and even family members. Would you advise it? Would you not advise it?
I would first say that friends are a little bit more difficult than family members. And I'll tell you why. There's not that blood relationship and that forgiveness. Lending money has broken up many friendships and many relationships, I'm sure. Lending a friend money if they need to, you again would be the best person to say if you're in a position to do so. If you don't have the money to lend and you still want to help out, I can understand you're a good person, but doesn't necessarily help you and doesn't necessarily help them, because you can't help them if you haven't helped yourself first. So find out where you are in that situation. If you can lend, if you were to lend your last dollar, it says a lot about you as a person, but again, it might not help you in the future, especially if you start to have responsibilities. You know, you always hear of these great people that are incredibly generous with their time and money, but many of them have the ability to lend. And that's why I said going to your parents, if they're not in a position to lend you money, there's probably a certain amount of guilt in asking for that. So do I believe in lending money personally? If I think like a bank, I would, but I would also want to make sure that I'm getting paid back properly. If you're doing it out of the goodness of your heart and lending money, make sure you know that you could do without that money if you had to, because it's not always going to come back. And family members, there's a bond there. There's a bond of love, and there's a bond of charity, and there's a bond of making sure that that person does well no matter what. My parents would have given me anything if they could. And so if you are lending or borrowing from a family member, pay it back. It'll say a lot about that relationship and how much you care. But more importantly, make sure that you're in a place to do so, whether you're a parent or whether you're a child, whether you're a brother or a sister. I think responsibility lies on both sides.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. This was inspiring and incredibly informative. And we're so, so grateful that you could spend time with us today.
I love giving back if I can, and giving advice if I can. And if you ever wanted me to come back, just let me know. I would ask you this though, if you haven't already seen the TED Talks, do it. I said to my wife the day that I hit 100,000 views on that, and I didn't even expect where I am right now. I promise you that. But if I hit 100,000, we're going to celebrate it at my family. But if you haven't, tell your friends, tell your loved ones, tell your family members, hit play on that, and hopefully a check mark. But I haven't really thought about it too much. It's really nice for you to re-engage me in thinking about this, because it brings back a lot of good feelings and a lot of passion in terms of what I do. So thank you.
Oh, of course, we're so appreciative. Thank you. And we will share that TED Talk throughout our community.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely. Have a wonderful day.
You too. You too. This is being recorded.
It is being recorded. I post them on my Zoom, my classroom. That's okay, just for kids who haven't been here.
I'll look for it myself, Kristin, if it's possible.
Oh yeah, I'll send it to you.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, you as well.
You were amazing, Patrick. Thank you.
Thank you.
Like I just talked to a famous person.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.